At other times, they've been authentic leaps and bounds. The Silk Route is one of history's most important developments with respect to contributing to the establishment of bonds and links between the peoples of Europe, Asia, and Africa. If from one place came brilliant thread made by caterpillars, from another came fabrics designed by artisans who had observed birds. In each and every corner of the world, there were different wells of inspiration. African weaverbirds probably invented the technique of tying bows and knots. The golden oriole from the New World threads the finest of plant strands with their beaks. They can sew with their mouths as well as a first-rate tailor. Their efforts result in sturdy structures for their offspring. And the smartest apes of all were right there watching, eager to have the chance to associate new ideas with new necessities. In fact, intelligence has been defined as the capacity to make such connections. And since many animals possess obvious intellectual prowess, the difference must once again be considered a question of degree. With those knots, bows, and fabrics, man would come up with the first of a series of cognitive associations even more complex than cloth or clothing. Motivated by the function that most conditions the mind and morphology of any animal, the need to obtain sustenance, man would reinvent the methods he used to acquire food. According to paleoanthropologists, it all started with gathering. In fact, they say that's why we stood up on two legs, to free our hands so we could pick or collect more and more. Free hands paved the way to a morphological change and a change in habits which led to a marked increase in our capacity to hunt. Free hands and very attentive eyes. There is no skill that we have imitated and/or adapted from wildlife better than the art of killing. We are masters. Masters who of course had their own masters, but we have taken it all much farther. We reached the very top of the pyramid of predation. Our level of sophistication in making weapons increased in relation to our aggressiveness towards obtaining more. It was a short step to fighting one another over supplies or territory, no matter how big or small. But war doesn't make us different either. Fratricidal conflict appears among all the different beasts on this planet. Our envy and drive for power aren't so different from the quest for success naturally pursued by all living beings. For some people, our false motivations and the sadistic cruelty of our wars and their consequences could place us on a different level than that occupied by other animals. But others believe that combat is just another element along the path of evolution. And if we're nothing more than a species that is the product of wild nature, perhaps we should assume that victory belongs exclusively to the strongest. Is our world a world of beasts? Or can we find at the center of our battlefields certain conditions that couldn't exist among beasts? We may be the only animals, given such power and ambition, that could completely exterminate ourselves if we exceeded our destructive impulses. However, if by chance humans disappeared all at once, wouldn't the surviving species continue? What then would our ephemeral pass through history have meant for planet Earth? But whatever doubts there may be, it is certainly curious, if not downright savage, that war may actually have been the most important factor in our evolutionary changes. From the very beginning, plants had to develop poisons to combat pests that would devour their leaves. The chemical war unleashed between the plant and animal kingdoms has fomented the perfecting of some of the most amazing toxic formulas, and in juxtaposition, some of the most incredible defensive systems and ingenious antidotes. War destroys and favors creativity at the same time. It's the most powerful ally of natural selection, but it does not transform the warrior into something supernatural. War is a very earthbound concept. In their peculiar war against the plant world, these monkeys discovered the key moment in their favorite tree's cycle, when the guapinol produces less toxins and the monkeys can eat its fruit without danger. When there was no danger, they could pass down this knowledge to their young. Plants' poison seems to have played a fundamental role in the design of a complex form of language among primates. But they haven't stopped being simple monkeys because of that. Certain African acacias have elaborated a strategic plan to keep giraffes from eating all their leaves. When they realize they are being attacked, each plant multiplies by 10 the amount of toxin in their sap and chemically alerts the rest of the stand that they should do the same to deter the enemy. The bitter taste the leaves take on in barely a few minutes dissuades the herbivores quickly. They'll have to look for lunch in another place. The fight to eat, and not to get eaten, is a violent one, and it requires biology to adapt, to change, to evolve. The human race, immersed in such a violent natural environment, has witnessed how the fight for survival can create new models that are useful in competition. And it has placed all of them at its disposal. We have learned to use poisons made by plants. With spices, we have been able to store and protect our food from parasites. And from that point on, from the knowledge we gleaned regarding the defensive mechanisms and aggressiveness of the beings we increasingly learned more and more about, we have developed such concepts as pharmaceuticals and medicine. Concepts, we must acknowledge, that have taught us a great deal about altruism, generosity, and cooperation. These traits, so closely linked to the good feelings that define us as persons, can also be found in other species with a sufficient degree of cerebral development and high levels of gregariousness. Although this is only found in a very germinal and basic stage. As in all primates, the individuals of the same clan are well differentiated hierarchically. And between each class or social level, relations, duties, and rights are firmly established as in any other biological family. Among baboons, certain behaviors have been clearly observed that might uncover the origins of altruism and individual sacrifice for the good of the entire community. The strongest young males tend to position themselves on the group's periphery. This makes them the perfect target of predators. But by doing so, they make sure the mothers, babies, and most experienced males in the clan are safer. In this way, the clan's genetic heritage and culture are protected to the maximum. The selfish gene only seeks survival and pays no heed to what's best or who's best for the whole. Perhaps this was the way early societies took their first steps towards generous behavior, towards not thinking only about oneself, but rather valuing what is necessary for everyone.